Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head over to Ireland once again, and we're going to return to a brewery that's featured on the channel once before. So the last beer that I had from these guys was pretty nice. It was quite an unusual one if memory serves me correctly, and I think I found it quite randomly in Kiosk over in Copenhagen, and I just thought, oh, Irish beer, need to review that, and I did, and it turned out to be pretty nice actually. Either that or it came through one of the Tillfällig sortiments through Systembolaget in Sweden, which is a possibility. I honestly can't remember. But that review was a way back in early 2019, so it's been almost 3 years since I reviewed something from this brewery. So I have to say, I'm quite curious to see how we got on with this one. So hopefully it's another good beer, hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head to Dublin in the Republic, and we're going to have a look at another beer from Stone Barrel Brewery. So this particular beer is called Like a Boss. It comes in at 6% ABV, and it's another New England hazy, whatever you want to call it, IPA. So yeah, curious to see, as I said, what this one has in store for us, and nice to return to these guys after quite some time. A few shout outs in this video as well, since it is an Irish beer. First off to Paul Rogers of Dalriada Imports. He is the one who has been supplying me with all these wonderful Irish beers, so do make sure you get in touch with him if you're a web shop or a beer shop or whatever and you want to have some Irish beers. He's been doing this in Scotland for a number of years, and he is looking to expand down into England as well. So yeah, give Paul a shout and help him find new stockists and things like that. Very, very nice guy, and a big thank you to him for making these Irish reviews possible here once again. Also a shout out to two Irish beer tubers. There's Brendan Sewell, who has views on brews, and there's also Thomas McCarthy of Thomas Window Beer. Both very, very nice guys and doing some really, really nice reviews actually. So if you want to see Irish beer reviewed a little bit more regularly than I do, then make sure you check them out. I'll try to remember to put the links to their channels in the video description for you below, so go and show them some love. But let's crack on with this one then and see how we go. So as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Stone Barrel Brewing before, and we will hopefully be able to add more to that list in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Irish beers that I've reviewed for you, and that contains the beers both from the North and from the Republic, and we'll be adding to that more over the next little while as well. And as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, on to my brewery notes then to tell you a little bit about Stone Barrel Brewing. So Stone Barrel Brewing were founded back in November of 2013 by Neil Fitzgerald and Kevin McKinney. Both of these guys had been homebrewing for a number of years before they decided they wanted to turn professional, and as I said earlier, the company is based in Dublin. So both Neil and Kevin had previously worked in accounts and finance at several big companies between them, and the two actually met during the banking boom in Ireland. But Neil apparently went away to travel the world, and when he got back he had found that Kev had been heavily enthralled in home brewing. But they continued to explore the hobby together, and they entered one of their beers in a home brewing festival and they won a bronze medal, and it was this achievement that prompted them to kind of, expand this hobby further and look at opening up their own company. But at the moment they're both doing all the things for the business together, as far as I can understand. They're brewing their beers in the Bluebell Estate, which is in the west of Dublin, and they share this premises with Third Circle Brewing, with whom they have the collaboration brand Third Barrel, and you will see me review a Third Barrel beer at some point quite soon actually, because I do have one of those in the fridge waiting to be reviewed, and hopefully we can have a little look at some of the Third Circle beers in the future as well. I'll need to ask Paul about that and see if he stocks them. But the brewery itself is equipped with a 1,100 litre brew kit, which originally came from the Czech Republic, so it was used before mainly for lager brewing actually, and I do believe they are looking to expand over the next little while. But as of November 2021, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced over 60 different kinds of beer, and when I looked at my notes for the original Stone Barrel review that I did, that was in early 2019, they produced around 15 kinds of beer back then. So they have been producing a fair number of beers, a couple every month if we take the numbers back. So yeah, maybe 1 or 2 beers every month. Has been what these guys have been outputting. So yeah, that is all I can really tell you about Stone Barrel Brewery for the moment. If you want to learn a little bit more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can of course check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, that is it for your history section in this video. So let's have a little look at the artwork then before we open up. Since this can has a sort of silver background, that's the only thing. The camera tends to hate these ones because they just reflect everything. It doesn't matter what kind of camera you've got. But yeah, there you can see Like a Boss, Strata Double Dry Hopped IPA. And there you go. If we zoom in a little bit, bring it in so the camera can see if it's going to like it. I don't think it's going to work. Wait a second. There you can see Stone Barrel Brewery. It's quite nice actually. I still love this camera. But yeah, it reminds me, I forget the name of that film with what's his name, Robin Williams, where he's a robot and he turns himself into a human. The artwork on this really reminds me of that actually. What is the name of that film? Should have looked that up before because I had that thought in my head earlier. But yeah, you can see plain silver top on this one, 440ml can. It tells you on the side here, a big hitting IPA, double dry hop with passion fruit and grapefruit forward strata hops, brewed by Stone Barrel at Third Barrel Brewing, Emerald House, Bluebell Industrial Estate, Dublin. So yeah, looks very nice this one. As we say, 440ml can. I can't tell you how much this one would cost in Ireland because Paul gave me these beers, unfortunately. This is the only thing about these Irish reviews. I can't tell you how much these beers actually would cost, but I'll make sure for the next lot that Paul gives me, I'll ask him what they would cost so I can tell you guys on the video here, because I know that people across the world like knowing how much craft beer costs in other countries. But yeah, really nicely presented. 6% New England Hazy IPA with Strata. Let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting then. So to tell you a little bit about Strata, Strata is an American hop. It comes in with about 12% alpha acid. It was originally known as X331, and it's supposed to give you a big kind of melony and sort of berry like fruit flavour actually. That's so I'm surprised that they're talking about, you know, passion fruit and things on this one, but it can give you a wee bit of that for sure. We found that in the past, but I always remember Stratus being quite, you know, like strawberry like and red fruity with a bit of melon underneath it. We have to be a bit careful with this beer because the can was pretty solid, so I think the carbonation was a little bit excitable in this one, so we need to just check. We need to remember that with this beer. Maybe it's not at its freshest, but yeah, we'll keep some of that there. So yeah, anyway, so as you can see with this one, it's got poured with quite a big head on it, but I'm sure that will dissipate when we leave it to settle for a little bit. But you can see there's a solid 2.5 finger cream coloured head on this one. We might need to pause the recording and come back to it a little bit later, right enough. We'll just see how that head behaves because I want it to kind of dissipate naturally rather than sort of forcing it, if you like. But you can see it, lovely head on this one. Let me just let the camera focus on that a wee bit. There you are. Looks very, very nice, as you can see. But yeah, in terms of the colour of this beer, you can see that it's poured a kind of quite nice deep amber colour actually. So yeah, it's not the darkest amber that I've come across, but it's certainly leaning towards that ambery side of the spectrum. But yeah, one or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, a few little ones going up toward the bottom of the head there, but overall it looks pretty nice, I have to say. So yeah, goes together really well. In terms of the level of haziness in this one, and I have to remember there is still some beer in the can, so perhaps it's perhaps some of the kind of oaty and wheaty notes, or oaty and wheaty bits in this one are sitting at the bottom of the can there, so it might get a little bit hazier later on. But yeah, it's a little bit more of a kind of natural haze that you got out of this one rather than a kind of full-blown haze. But remember, the colour of your beer depends on 1, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining the EBC rating for the beer. 2, the length of your wort boil is also going to play a role. The longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. Any barrel aging that you do or any adjuncts that you put in are also going to affect the colour of your beer as well. But when it comes to a sort of New England hazy IPA like this, that's not really going to affect that you don't really have to care about those variables too much. And when it comes to New England IPAs as well, the level of haze is determined by the yeast that you use and the oat and the wheat content, of course. There's not really a real rule as to, higher the alcohol scale, the higher the malt content, thus the more hazy the beer is going to be. But yeah, it just varies from brewery to brewery and even recipe to recipe, of course. But in terms of what you'd expect from a kind of modern IPA, the appearance of this one is not really surprising, to be honest with you. So yeah, that's everything we need to say about the appearance. I think we can take a look at the aroma now and just see how we go. So yeah, curious about this. Aroma wise, I'm going to say it is pretty nice actually. I love the aroma of Strata hops actually. I've been really getting into these over the last wee while, and I have noticed actually quite a few of the beers that Paul has given me this time have had Strata in them, and you see that in different countries. Some countries go through phases of using Sabro and Strata and things like that. So I guess at the time, the time that Paul was giving me these beers, Ireland is going through a bit of a phase of importing Strata. So yeah, that's quite interesting for sure. Must just be what the suppliers can get a hold of at the time. But what I'm going to say about this beer, as a general overview, this one is quite, I would say that it's got quite a big floral green component to it. The green component is quite pungent for me. The malt base comes across as being a little bit more kind of wheaty and bitey rather than anything else, and the fruity notes are quite pungent and they're quite pungent, but at the same time they're quite juicy. So yeah, aroma wise, this one for me is really quite interesting. So yeah, let's just have a little closer. We'll have a little closer look at that for sure. As I've told you, in my opinion, there are 6 different directions you can take a New England IPA in. So it can be a little bit more kind of yeasty and farmhousey, or it can be rye leaning and grainy. Those are not quite as common in Europe as they might be over in America, in my experience. But you've also got the kind of wheaty and bitey aspect, the oaty creamy side of things, the barley malt leaning and bready side, and you've also got some nice kind of brown sugary kind of characters, brown sugary and sweet characters that you can get from these beers, from these New England beers as well. But this one for me, on the malty side of things, it's quite nice actually. I find this one, it's actually, you can smell, if we break the aroma down a bit more in depth, you definitely get a nice little bit of a kind of bread crusty quality coming out of it. For sure, that's the backbone, and you get a lot of that soft kind of barley malt leaning white bread actually. So I do like how that goes together in this one. So yeah, little bread crust, that barley malt white bready sort of thing. You can smell the wheat sort of thickening it out in this beer as well. At the back of the nose, there's definitely a big bit of that kind of wheaty bitiness for sure. So I really like that about this beer as well. It has, in fairness too, I think there is a little bit of oaty character to this one, but I think that takes a bit of a back seat to the wheaty side of the beer. So for me, this really leans towards the wheaty end of the New England spectrum. So I wonder if this is going to be a little bit more like some of the kind of Trillium ones that I've had from over in the States, rather than the more oaty and creamy Treehouse beers. And of course, you've got Alchemist, who tend to be a little bit more kind of farmhousey and rye leaning actually. Their beers are interesting. Loss's Finest Liquids as well are a little bit more kind of brown sugary, but still farmhousey. But yeah, the aroma on the malty side of this one is quite nice. So for me, there is a little bit of a kind of straight up caramel in this one, a little bit of a McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of thing, and you've also got some Werther's Original kind of butter candy, butterscotchy sweetness to the beer as well. So the malt base for me is quite interesting. This is quite different to the other Irish beers we've reviewed over the last little while. So I'm curious to see how that translates into the flavour actually. And as I said earlier, we do have a 3rd barrel beer to take a look at in a future video as well. So we'll see how both of these turn out in fact. So yeah, interesting from the malty side of things. Let's look at the hoppy side of the beer before we taste it. So, in terms of the green component, like I said earlier, this one really has quite a pungent floral aromatic character to it. It's really, there's a teeny little bit of earthiness in there, but not a lot. The green component for me really leans towards that big, bitey, floral, aromatic sort of thing. Round the front of the nose, I would say you've got quite a zesty, grassy character to this one as well. So that's really interesting for me. I do like that about this beer. It really has, you know, it's a big wheaty leaning thing. It's a big a big floral bitey sort of thing, and it's got a good bit of grassy zestiness in there as well. So yeah, I think this one could turn out to be very interesting. So let's look at the fruity side of the beer just to round off the aroma then. So on the aroma, for me, it is, I've always found with Strata, it leans towards this candied strawberry berry sort of thing, and you really do get that in this beer for sure. Absolutely. Yeah, lovely big kind of lovely sort of juicy candied berry kind of note with this one. Absolutely. Strawberry for sure. Yeah, definitely strawberry. So you get a lot of that in there, but you do get a wee bit of the kind of oily melon underneath, I would say. But I think that takes a back seat to the strawberry. Strata for me is just, it's a big strawberry thing you get out of it. It's big juicy strawberries. I can see what they're saying. They said like passion fruit and grapefruit. To be fair, I'm not sure if I would agree so much on the grapefruit, but I would agree a little bit more on the kind of passion fruity side of things. It's not quite as pungent, I would say, as grapefruit for me. I think it's a little bit more of a mellow passion fruit. So I agree with them on the passion fruit, but not necessarily on the grapefruit. But for me, there's quite a bit of melon, and there's that big, you know, distinctive strawberry berryish character from the Strata in this. I really like how that goes together in this one. Very interesting stuff actually. So aroma wise, the fruity side of this beer is nice and juicy, but I think it shows you a wee bit of an oily character as well. So let me just pour the rest of this in before we taste the beer, and we'll see how it goes. There we are. It's quite a neat pour that actually. Let me just line this up with the camera again, and so we can have a taste of this one finally. So yeah, this one is the Like a Boss, a 6% Strata double dry hop New England hazy, whatever you want to call it, IPA from Stone Barrel Brewing in West Dublin. Let's get stuck into this one. Sláinte, skål, cheers, and a big thank you again to Paul for making this review possible. Let's go for it. Yeah, it's quite nice. I'm going to say though, in terms of, this is one of these ones where the flavour differs quite a wee bit from what the aroma gives you. It's not quite got the same nuances that I thought it was going to have from the aroma. First impression of it is it's a little bit more kind of barley malt leaning. It's a little bit more towards that bready end of the spectrum. And the green component for me, it's the floral character just isn't quite as pungent as I thought it was going to be. So that's interesting, but we do have to remember the can here was pretty solid, and the carbonation's been quite active, so this beer probably has been sitting for a little bit. It doesn't have a canned on date as far as I can see, but yeah, we need to bear that in mind with this one, is that it's probably not at its freshest. But that said, it does hold up pretty well. I mean, like I say, it's quite a bready leaning kind of IPA, this one, and it leans a little bit more towards the grassy end on the green component, but the fruity juicy side of it is really nice. It's actually very smooth and quite slick New England IPA just on the first impression. So yeah, this is one that definitely varies quite a wee bit in the flavour compared to what you would expect in the aroma. So yeah, curious, definitely curious. So yeah, where do we start with this one then? So let's go through the malty character as we always do. Straight away across the middle of your palate then, you can feel a little bit of that bread crusty quality, but that takes a wee bit of time to come out. I would point that out. The further you go into the aftertaste for this one, you get that nice kind of bread crusty quality, and you also get the nice you also get a nice little bit of the it shows you a little bit more of a kind of grainy character, to be honest with you, the further you go into the aftertaste. Does this have a little bit of rye in it? No. I almost could have believed that there was a little touch of rye in this or something, because that graininess it really does get quite prominent the further you go into the aftertaste. And I think I remember that. The other one that we had before from this brewery, I forget the name of it now. It's gone right in my head. But the last beer I had from these guys, when I looked at it earlier, had Denali in it. And Denali It's a hop that I've not really taken to be honest with you. I think it's got a different name now, if memory serves me correctly. But yeah, the Mojo, that was it, Mojo. But yeah, this beer really, I remember the other one that we had having a little bit of this earthy kind of grainy sort of thing to it as well. So maybe it's to do with their yeast. Maybe it's the yeast that's giving you a little bit of this kind of earthy grainy sort of thing. Who knows? But yeah, bread crusty backbone there, which takes a little bit of time to come out the further you go into the aftertaste. As you move towards the front of that middle third of your palate, there's one or two little woody characters underneath there as well. But yeah, bit of bread crust, a little bit of a brown bready quality in there as well, I would say. And on top of that, you get the kind of more smooth white bready barley malt coming out of the beer. So yeah, we'll see. Yeah, I think it's interesting because when you first take the beer in the middle of your palate, it's actually very, very smooth and really leans towards that kind of white bready end of the spectrum. So I like that about this beer, definitely. And on top of that, you can feel a sort of thin, there is a slightly thinner wheaty layer there just forming on top of that and thickening the beer out a wee bit. And you can feel that, but then down the middle line of your tongue, you can feel it's quite it is quite oaty in a sense, and you can tell with this beer, as I've said in other reviews, the way to tell how old a New England IPA is, in my experience, is to look at how the oaty characters come out. When the beer is really, really fresh, the oats are going to be really nice and creamy, but the further you go down the line with the beer, the oats are going to kind of dry out a little bit and show you a wee bit more of a kind of powdery character. And as you go down the middle line of your palate in this one and kind of move out towards the edges of the palate, on top of the wheaty layer, which thickens out the bready character, you can feel that sort of more powdery oaty character in this beer. In fairness, the oats still have a wee bit of a sweetness to them, particularly further forward on the palate. Remember, sweeter flavours come out further forward, kind of more grainy, bitter flavours come out further back. But yeah, you can feel that this one, I think this beer is maybe about 3 months old, something like that. So yeah, it's not at its prime, but it's still in good condition. But if you focus on the very dead centre of your palate, you can feel there's a little circle there, and it gives you a wee bit more of that. That's where you get a little bit of the kind of brown sugary side of the beer. So there's a wee bit of a kind of there's a wee bit of a sort of Werther's Original. There's a wee bit of a kind of Werther's Original butter candy sort of thing to this one. So I like how that goes together in the beer. Maybe there's one or two little kind of biscuity elements the further out towards the edge of the palate that you go with this one. I don't know if it could be a little bit of Golden Promise malt that's in this one, actually. That would make sense. So yeah, it's got quite a distinctive Werther's Original kind of McVitie's digestive sort of sweetness to it, this one. But I would say that the sweetness really comes out a little bit more the further you go into the aftertaste, along with the kind of graininess that the beer has. So yeah, I think, to be honest, that covers everything that we really need to say about the middle third of your palate. So let's focus on the back third of the palate then. Border region between middle third and back third of your palate, again you get a nice little bit of a bready build up there. Then the base of the back third of your palate, you get that nice kind of bread crusty note there. It is a little bit more intense and grainy because it's at the back of the palate. You get some of the brown bread on top of that, a little bit of a white bready character, then a wee bit of the kind of wheaty layer sitting on top of that. And the wheat, of course, is a little bit more bitey towards the back of the palate. Then sitting on top of that, you get the kind of yeasty component of the beer. So you can feel that little bit more of you feel that little bit more kind of dense yeasty kind of thing coming out of the beer. So yeah, the yeasty notes in this are a little bit more grainy, and they are a little bit more sort of I would say it has got a little bit of that kind of woody, crackery type vibe to it as well, on the yeasty kind of things. But yeah, you can feel that slightly more dense, doughy, yeasty thing just sitting on top of the bready character in this beer. So again, I really like how that goes together in this one. But when you start at the back of the palate with this beer, you can feel the flavour is a little bit taller. Then as you come further forward, it just condenses down a wee bit, and then the flavours in the middle third of your palate are just a bit more kind of squashed together, actually. But yeah, the malty, yeasty side of this beer is quite nice, and as I say, this is a bit more of a kind of grainy beer, this one, in a sense. So flavour wise, it does have a wee bit more of a kind of yeasty and barley malt kind of and almost slightly farmhousey kind of thing to it as well, which is interesting. But yeah, I do like how this goes together, actually. And you can see from having, it's been nearly 3 years since I tried the other beer, but I do remember that one because of the Denali hop. Denali is a hop, as I say, that I really struggled to take to. But yeah, you do get, I can still remember some of the sort of traits, if you like, of that beer, and can compare it to this one a little bit, which is, I'm quite impressed that I can still remember that, to be honest with you. My brain's ridiculous at some points. But yeah, when it comes to the hoppy side of the beer, then the green component, in the back corners of your palate, you definitely get a wee bit of an earthiness out of this one for sure. And again, I wonder if this is coming from the yeasty side of things. As you move further forward, there's a little bit of a herbal quality, for sure. But then as you push towards the kind of front corners of the palate, you've definitely got a little bit more of that kind of big floral aromatic sort of thing. And I would say that it's quite a pungent floral aromaticity. It's not overly spicy, but yeah, it does have quite a nice big kind of pungency to it for sure. So I like that. I do like that. Yeah, I do think that goes together really nicely for sure. But round the front curve of the palate, it's got a little bit of a lighter grassy sort of thing. The grassiness, in fairness, has a wee bit of zest to it, but it's also got that kind of freshly cut, that wet, freshly cut grass type vibe to it. So yeah, with the way that that goes together as well is very, very nice. Let's focus on the front third of your palate then, and the fruity side of the beer to round off the taste. So border region between front third and middle third of your palate, again you get a little bit of that bready build up there. Then the base of the front third of your palate is more of a kind of bread crusty, brown bready sort of thing. I'm surprised, I thought it would be a little bit kind of smoother and like a white bread, but then on top of that you get those nice, you get that nice kind of oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters roll their way out of the beer. So yeah, let's focus on exactly what fruits we have in this one. So yeah, again, the fruits are actually quite similar to what you pick up in the aroma of this one. And the flavour wise, I think there's maybe a teeny little bit of passion fruit at the back of the front third of your palate there. I do disagree on the grapefruit. I don't think it's quite pungent enough to be grapefruit in terms of the flavour. But when you move forward from that, it does have a kind of, it's got this, it's like a mix of mango and almost slightly gooseberry like. You can feel that quite quickly this beer gets, you know, really quite nice and oily. So yeah, you get this big oily kind of melony character. You do get this nice big oily melony character out of it. Then push as you push further forward on the palate there, I think yeah, you get a wee bit of the goose. You do get a little bit of an almost gooseberry sort of thing, but there is a wee bit of a slightly citrusy zest just towards the kind of front tip of the tongue, just behind the grassy esters. But then on top of that, and as you go further into the aftertaste, I think you get a little bit of I think there is a little bit of kind of sort of juicy strawberry kind of note to it as well. You get that typical kind of berry, juicy strawberry sort of thing that you would expect of Strata. So I think this beer shows off Strata's qualities, the melon, the melon, the kind of strawberry berry sort of thing, and the kind of floral aromaticity quite nicely actually. So yeah, the way that this goes together, I think, is really nice. So yeah, thumbs up to Stone Barrel once again, and I have to say I'm quite curious to try the third barrel beer that I've got as well. So keep your eyes peeled for that. But yeah, this is a solid kind of oily and more slick New England IPA for sure. So thumbs up to them for that. Let's round off the review with a look at the mouthfeel then. So yeah, mouthfeel wise, I would say this beer, it's pretty much right in the middle of the spectrum. It is mid-bodied. The carbonation for me is quite smooth, but you could see the head on this one was big, so I think quite a lot of the carbonation had kind of done its thing in the can and just had sort of just gone up the top a little bit. So keep that in mind. But yeah, the overall, I would say this beer is quite smooth and quite slick actually. It's one of the more oily New England IPAs I've had in recent times, but it does give you the impression of a little bit of creaminess as well. In terms of the IBUs, I think this is a fairly standard, 30 IBU beer. It doesn't strike me as being overly bitter. The malt base and the yeasty side of the beer, as we said, the middle of your palate essentially has a little bit of graininess and dryness to it the further you go into the aftertaste, but there's a nice wee bit of smoothness there and a little touch of sweetness. But I would add, I would say with that, the sweetness is it's not the sweetest beer you're going to come across. This one, it is a bit more of an old school kind of bready type thing. Actually, it is a more kind of 2015, 2016 era type New England IPA, this for sure. But the fruits are nice and oily in this one, and I think that suits the Strata hop quite nicely. So yeah, I think we can leave it at that for this review. So this one was the Like a Boss 6% New England Hazy, whatever you want to call it, double dry hopped IPA from Stone Barrel Brewery in West Dublin. I think they did a nice job of this, so I'm going to go and share the rest of this one with my dad now. But yeah, once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Stone Barrel, Third Barrel and Third Circle Brewery as well, because these guys are all associated with each other. But I thank you again for watching. Check out my social media, check out theirs, and I'll catch you guys in the next review. Slàinte, skål, cheers. Make sure you check out Stone Barrel Brewery from Dublin, and big thank you to Paul once again. Cheers.